What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to the Vikings Lounge with your host, Chris Rogers here. Hope all is well, really out there in cyberspace. Excited to be here with you. Obviously, the NFL Combine has just finished wrapping up, and we didn't really see a ton of fast times, a lot of consistent times, but there were more probably 4.2s than the last few years. Maybe 4 or 5 guys to let you know really how elite they are. But a ton of 4.4s and only a few 4.3s, which kind of tells you kind of the players that are there, which I thought was really exciting. Obviously, the usual suspects, Ohio State, obviously doing fantastic things and continuing to develop some of the best football players in the world. So really want to talk about competitiveness today and really what that's ultimately about. And so as I really look at the 3 levels of high school, college, and pro, really want to get into being a competitor. Oftentimes within my training, parents really come to me, and the first thing they really talk about is really getting their student athlete better. And then, during training, oftentimes what I talk about is really expectations, but I also want the athlete to understand that my expectations of yourself shouldn't be higher than yours. And it kind of hits a switch for them, right? You've had mom, dad kind of coach you up through maybe junior high school, youth association ball. And then you get into high school where now, that JV, that freshman coach, that JV coach, that varsity coach has been there 15 years. And there's no politics that get along with it. And what you really you get away from is obviously the nepotism, but a big piece that you then dive yourself into is a world of competition. In high school, much like in any single town, you're going to know who those really good athletes are, right? It doesn't matter if you're inner city, suburbs, or rural, that competitive nature really begins within your community ball first. Because now, as a freshman, you're seeing those sophomores that are above you, those 8th graders that are below you, and understanding those that are in your grade so that you understand the competitive nature of what ball really is. One of the greatest competitors that I've ever met, a guy named Carlos Everett. Carlos was just a fantastic competitor on the basketball court. I ended up going to Townsend State. His nephew played at the University of Maryland. But Carlos really taught me about being intentionally intense. And that's what one thing that I really make up, with the student athletes that I work with is you've got to go out there and I'm going to create a lesson plan for you in terms of your training that's really going to be fantastic. It's going to be customized for you. But understand that each rep, each step has purpose. And that's critically important as a competitor because when you're beginning to make that jump to JV to varsity, or even wanting to go out there and just be a starter, the first thing you've got to look at is your competitive nature. And that really comes from, number one, wanting to be the best, right? And when you want to be the best, you start understanding, where do I rank on the scheme of things? Ran against a basketball kid, Brian Keaton. Brian was always 2 steps ahead of us. We were better athletes than him. But in terms of his conditioning, Brian ran point guard in basketball. I wasn't a basketball player, but Brian is one of my favorite basketball players from Sherwood High School. But, everything about Brian was that, we ran our mile before basketball season. Brian was running in the 5s, 5:46. I was getting down into maybe 6:01, right around there, maybe second or third in terms of where he was at. But you could tell that he trained and he developed. It wasn't just going out there just trying to run. He really understood for basketball season, I've got to be ahead of the curve. And between that, you start seeing in terms of great competitors, is great competitors know who great competitors are. And so there's things that maybe one guy has that another guy doesn't. And you know that, hey, that guy might be taller, guy might be faster, that guy might be stronger, a better technician. And so that's when you want to pick and choose parts of those guys as competitors that you can begin to add to your game. So being a competitor is something that naturally, I think, can happen. But also, when you get around a group of guys, where do you stand? And especially in high school sports, you begin to see, all right, who's elite, who's not. And then oftentimes those guys that really jump up and are able to make those plays, you're only talking about 5 to 8 plays that you can make in high school that can really separate you and get you to the next level and the next step. And then all the culmination of hard work, whether you're running indoor track, outdoor track, 7-on-7, sports performance training, but it gets you into that mindset of really being at your best all the time. And what you really want it to be able to do is you want to wash it into every facet of your life. How great can I be? And that's one thing as a former athlete, that I really talk about too as I'm coaching kids, is really looking at, the competitiveness is great, but also when you're being at your best, it's in every aspect of your life. And we talked about this some of my other earlier podcasts, looking at being at home. How are you at home? Are you taking out the garbage? Are you, cleaning the dishes and putting them away for mom and dad? Are you cutting the grass without asking, right? And then as a student, are you going to school? Are you doing all your work? Are you, when you're getting home, really pouring as much of yourself as you're doing in your sport also into your schoolwork? Because that's critically important as you begin to develop. And, as a student athlete, you're on the road quite a bit. And can you be able to focus on 15, 16, 18 hours that you may be taking of classes where you want to be at your ultimate best, really want to be, again, a competitor in the classroom as well as outside the classroom, and really how does it line up? And, I saw a really great podcaster the other day from Central State, former DB from the Denver Broncos. And him and I were kind of going back and forth online, just talking about the importance of intelligence on the football field. Oftentimes you think of student athletes and you think, oh, they're just athletes, they just get by. Oftentimes we have more road barriers in our path than those in others. And so when you're talking about a scholarship, D1, D2, D3, NIA, junior college, you're asked to not only do your sport, but also maintain a grade point average. And sometimes, for those of us that remember the SAT, ACT scores, you had to score a certain level to be able to to get a scholarship, because they wanted to see, okay, your grades are great, that can get you through, but these tests, these national tests, how do you do in those? And that was kind of a barrier back in the day. And so, again, you had to be better than just a general education student that didn't do anything, that got a chance to go home and do their homework for 4 hours when you're at practice, and then doing those extra ancillary activities to improve your stock and improve yourself at camps and combines. So, being a competitor, it's always about being the best, and also making sure that it's a fair playing field. As I got into corporate America, guys wanted to be competitors, but then they're skewing the game a little bit. It's like, you really can't do that, man. If you're going to be a competitor, do it the right way, where you're going to beat somebody mano a mano. You're not going to have to go over the river and through the woods, or cut corners, or use a performing enhancing drug. You're really looking for the hard work and finding that balance to be able to be at your best. And, as a competitor, that's what it's ultimately about. So, high school is really where it begins. And then as you jump to college, now you're talking about elite guys. And so, today's topic is really all about being elite. Really, eliteness really comes from being an ultimate competitor. When you go to college, everybody's played in an all-star game. They're all state, they're all conference, they're all county, whatever the case may be. So you have to be willing to go into those circumstances and understand really how great these guys are, And then where do you lie into those places? And I went to Howard. Kurt Jones, who was got a chance to go into a number of training camps at cornerback, really was a fantastic athlete out of Northern Virginia, and did some really incredible things. He ended up ripping his ACL, but ended up coming back, winning a national championship, and going on to get some shots up in New England with the Patriots. But, Kurt really taught me about being a competitor, keeping it light, and always making sure that you're really on point. Especially, I was a young sophomore, starting opposite of him his senior year, and kind of understanding the importance of, being that competitor. And, when you go to college, and especially in your position group, there aren't any friends. There's only 2 spots at each position outside of linebacker that is really going to warrant you an opportunity to get on the field and play. And so when there's a Division I scholarships where there's 8 cornerbacks or 12 cornerbacks on full scholarship, those are fantastic competitive opportunities to where you can't afford to mess up. You can't afford to not be at your best. You can't afford to get into fights, to get into alcohol, booze, girls, whatever the case may be, those type of distractions that initially hurt the opportunity for you, and it can easily fall you from grace in terms of, being in that competitive board where there's a number 1, there's a number 2, there's a number 3. And so you want to be able to make sure that you're at your absolute best. But in reality, those guys in your position, they could care less because they want the ball. If you're a wide receiver, you want to catch more balls. If you're a running back, you want to get more handoffs. If you're a defensive back, you want some more PBUs, and you only get that by really playing on a day-to-day basis and being a true competitor. And it begins at practice. A lot of times guys think practice is a time to chill. Even if you've made a name for yourself. I know there was times during my spring ball where, my coach was like, man, just sit out. And I'm thinking, nah, that ain't happening because, these guys are watching you and are competitors. And as a leader, that you set the standard, you set the bar. So there's no way that you can really, really slow things down, right? You can't take the foot off the gas per se. But being a competitor is ultimately about that. And in college, again, we're all trying to get to the NFL, the CFL, playing some sort of pro football to really live out a dream. And, at the end of the day, you've got to be willing to do what it takes because now you're dealing with 115 guys, 115 teams in Division 1A, another 60 between 1AA and as well as D2. So that there's 200 different schools out there with tons of athletes, freak guys that are the best in the world at what they do. There's no other state, no other country in the United States that plays American football like Americans. There's just no way. I'm not going to go to some other country and they're going to be better athletes. They're better equipped in terms of like college guys are today, from the nutrition to the speed work to the lifting. All those pieces culminate into really a fantastic athlete. And so, as I look at it, a big piece for me is as a competitor is understanding, what I have to do on a day-to-day basis. It begins with every rep at practice, every drill at practice, understanding the scheme of that week. Again, we talk about that intelligence that you have to be able to pick it up, because understanding as a defensive back in every position, that offensive coordinator is looking at a cornerback and he's going to say, here are the routes that we can do. Here are the guys you're going to do it with. And they're trying to find your weakness. They're trying to find what they can really do to you on the football field. So you're dealing with that on top of the guys that are next to you that are at your age at 19, 20, 21 years old that are faster than lightning and have an aggressive mindset of really wanting to be their best and take their game to the next level. As you jump to the pros now, it's a little bit different. The competitiveness is there, but also there is a very distinct group that is going to be a starter or not. And so you learn really quickly, how to work and who's doing what, and those competitive juices. It's not about money in the NFL, and I think a lot of guys get that misconstrued. Oh, I want to make money. I want to make money. But in the NFL, guys, everybody is trying to play, because playing is what gets you paid, not just sitting back. And that's what the draft is about, right? That's what the signing bonus is about, is that we believe in your talent so much so that we're going to give you this amount of money in order for you to take those jumps and be able to go to the next step and to the next level. So it's a little bit more rich of an environment where guys are trying to teach you the different techniques, because you go from college, which is one technique, to the pros, where you have to make an adjustment. If you don't make that adjustment with your footwork, with your hand placement, understanding where that ball is going to be, understanding the spacing between the receivers and the different routes, the different zones that are going to happen, the down and distance, again, that intelligence that has to happen really is at a split second. But understanding the new nuances of a brand new game, it's a brand new ball, it's brand new hashes, that makes the game very more wide open, and really a very faster game, and a faster kind of track meet per se. But the competitiveness at that level is second to none. And so even as a coach, when I'm working with high school athletes at the 3 high schools that I've been able to coach at, that's the one thing that I really try to shape within my practices is a ton of competition. And oftentimes I like to put together guys that are friends. They think, oh man, we friends, man. Coach Ross ain't gonna do nothing. I put them right together and I let them beat themselves up. It gets them hardened. It gets them understanding the separate, that business from the business on the school. The friendship and the relationship is uniquely different now, because I want these guys to be on their edge. I want them to be very competitive. I want them to work really, really hard. And because that way, when they are looked at on film, whether it be an evaluator, whether it be for a high school across the street, or going to college where they're getting evaluated, that they always have that switch of being great competitors and ultimately being at their best. So, as the combine begins to wrap up, and the draft begins in just a few short weeks, understand being a competitor is ultimately what it's about. It's about really being at your best, really giving your all to make a difference and make an impact. And, ultimately that's what it's about. So competition. You always want to be at your best. You always want to be swinging for the fences and trying to hit a home run every single time. Hey, I appreciate you guys coming out and enjoying this sunny day, man. It's 51 degrees here, so it is springtime here in Minnesota. I don't know how long it's going to stay, but I'm going to bask in the sunshine. Had a nice walk today, and just had a really good time of just getting back out there and enjoying the weather when you can just show up in some nice gear and just take a walk and enjoy life. So, hey, man, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in to the Viking Lounge with your host, Chris Rogers. Be blessed. We'll talk soon. Thanks for showing up.